Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ebuka Chidubem Uzoama, and I'm a research fellow with Anote AI. So today I'm presenting my affiliation study on semantic chunking and hybrid retrieval for financial document Q&A, which is run on the finance bench. So a simple question: does adding complexity to like a retrieval pipeline actually help on financial documents? So basically, I tested like a fixed chunking baseline against semantic chunking and a full hybrid pipeline. And I ran the whole comparison twice independently to make sure like the results actually held up. And oh, for the setup, the financial filings are long, they're table heavy, and cross reference. Exactly the kind of documents people point to when they want to justify adding more machinery to like a rack pipeline. So I just picked the five most common upgrades, which is the most common upgrades: semantic chunking, the metadata, query expansion, hybrid search, re-ranking, and asked a narrow question: do they actually beat a plain baseline? Okay, so going into like the three pipelines, um, the same generation model throughout, only like the retrieval side changes, and for the baselines, they you have like the fixed width chunks, the plain TF, IDF, and which is and the control. And for the semantic, you have one change, chunking on paragraph and sentence boundaries instead of like a fixed word count. And for hybrid, we have everything stacked, um, the structure aware chunking, the metadata prefixes, the BM 25, which is the TF IDF fusion, the HYDE query expansion, and the lexical re-ranking. So now we'll talk about like how it was run. So it just comes in five basic steps, which is first of all a stratified sample of 14 questions across 11 filings, and three pipelines built identically apart from like the retrieval, and every question scored on the rogue L F1 and the exact match. And then an independent rerun actually was taking place, and from the fresh PDFs, fresh retrieval, and a separately like written sets of answers. So there was no picking out at like one of the run that we actually did. And lastly, there was a bootstrap test to like get real confidence intervals instead of like eyeballing the differences. So going into the results. So for the headline result, the baseline won in both runs, and the semantic scored lower both times, down from 0.035 and 0.023. And the hybrid for hybrid, five techniques combined also score lower both times, which is for down from 0.024 and 0.021. And added, the complexity moved the score the wrong direction twice, not once. And now thinking about for this slide, we're wondering whether it is real or it is a noise. So I didn't want to like call a drop real just because like the average was lower. So I actually bootstrapped the confidence intervals on the differences. So the semantics dropped in like in round one, which is like statistically significant, and the whole interval stays below zero. And the other three drops are directionally consistent but don't clear that bar on their own. So one solid finding is that the three weaker signals pointing are pointing like in the same way. And going to like the weak spot, this is the slide most likely to like I have questions based on because I was really not convinced or I wasn't satisfied. So like I did multiple testing. And so I what I actually eventually did here is that I broke down the question type, the every pipeline, the baseline, the semantic, the hybrid, and scored zero and everything scored zero exact on like the exact match on the numeric questions. So not lower zero or every conditions, but for like both runs that I carried out. And there wasn't like a bug, and I'm not even I was trying to like find a bug here, but like I wasn't able to find it. And none of the three setups ever like surfaced the correct number to the model at all. So that's like a retrieval failure and not like a reasoning failure. So after that, um, after the which is like the post hoc analysis, I diagnosed like the three concrete causes of why this issue was really prominent. So the needed number and its rows label were split across like separate chunks. And some answers required combining figures from two statements that never appear together, and some questions used shorthand like the capex or the DNA that never appears verbatim like in the filing. So I fixed all three and reran the five numeric questions that had failed. And four came back exact, while the fifth one was correct in substance, but like sensitive to like rounding. And this diagnostic, not a fourth condition, and this is like a diagnosis, which is not like a fourth condition that I built, it knowing like which questions had actually failed. Okay, so coming like into like the held out check, so I tested it on questions it wasn't built around. So 10 fresh questions from 10 companies never used anywhere in the main application, and which scored blind with not no tuning at all. So the baseline got six of the 10 exactly right, and the fix got five of the 10. So it didn't beat the baseline. What it did do reliably is like solve like the exact problem it targets. Like for instance, PepsiCo's EBITDA margin needed two statements combined, and the fix caught both. But it also introduced like two new misses, which is the Coca-Cola and the Amcor, where the baseline simpler chunking already worked, which is like a real fix, but it doesn't generalize into a blanket win. And going into the findings, the semantic chunking reliably underperforms the baselines, which is significant in run one. And then the full hybrid stack doesn't recover that loss, even like combining five separate enhancements. And the exact match failure wasn't sorry, the exact failure was fixable in the cases that I diagnosed, but the held out test shows the fix ties the baseline rather than beating it. And For the limitations, so uh, I guess some of the limitations include like small sample, which was just 14 questions with only four numeric ones, and one model, one retrieval stack, and a conservative floor, not a ceiling. So two runs is also, I guess that was also like a limitation too, and not a multi-seed. It wasn't like a multi-seed study, and um, one filing dropped, and which failed to parse under like two extractors, and the evaluation wasn't blinded except the held out except on like if you go back to like the held out slide, which um yeah, that I was mentioning about the um yeah, so except on the held out side, which I was mentioning about like it didn't beat the baseline. What it did was reliably like just solve the exact problem it targets. So and then which also like state like the run actually scored blind. So I would say for because I was looking at going into like the related work. So I was looking at the research papers that are actually related to this study, and seven of these papers actually underneath this. So the finance bench is the benchmark itself, and I know SETI LL is like the closest prior work, and actually found gains where I didn't find at all, which was worth flagging as disagreement. But the rest of them confirm numeric table reasoning is hard, and tables need like retrieving as like intact units. And for the BM25 cannot like beat a new neural retrieval on this document type. And also metadata helps alone, but it isn't like guaranteed to combined. And the finance tuned embedding do not like they do actually outperform the general ones. So in summary, the bottom line is that uh, three takeaways is the the playing baseline is legitimate, which with fixed chunking plus the TF IDF is which is a real default, but not a straw man to like automatically upgrade past. And complexity doesn't compound for free, which is combining like five enhancement, added risk without payoff. And also a diagnosed fix still needs a held out test. Mine solved every failure it was built for and still only tied the baseline once I actually tested it on fresh questions. And for needs for next steps, four things in order. I think the next thing I'll do is swap the TF IDF and the BM25 for neural embeddings, which is my top priority. And everything here, including like the fixes lexical, like it can breach a query term absent from the source text. And the secondly, I'm going to retest the fix at a larger held out scale with 10 questions, and one draw is a start, not like a verdict. So, and then lastly, I'm going to make the statement diversified. I'm going to make the statement diversified within a retrieval condition, in a retrieval condition, which is only like trigger it when the question itself needs it to avoid the regressions without losing the case it solves. And also, um, once tightened, I'm going to promote the fix to a real fourth condition and run with the same to rerun, which is bootstrap treated the bootstrap tested treatment as the other three treatment. And that is it for this presentation.